which we thought was causing our alarm system to go off because of low level of water and low pressure. So if the pressure is low, then the sprinkler system won't work in case of a fire. So we definitely didn't want to have kids on campus without the fire alarm working. So they did determine that it was the lighting. They are trying to fix it, but there's pressure in the water and the sprinkler system will work. We will just have to make sure your radios are charged tonight, make sure your cell phones are charged, because we'll have to kind of be on fire watch with our radios until the panel gets fixed, but they're still working on it. Okay, so just please make sure you come with your cell phones tomorrow charged, and that you make sure your radios are charged as well. The board did pass for us to order new radios so that everybody would have a new radio on campus. We know that our radios are old, some of them need to be replaced, so we're placing the order so everyone will have radios ASAP. Okay? Also, in terms of the mask wearing, you know the board of supervisors did not vote to mandate masks through Pima County. So when we met with the board on Monday, we are going to highly encourage mask wearing for yourselves if you want. Kids, encourage them. We are going to have hand sanitizing done at the gate like we were doing. We're just not doing temperature checks. But we will have our parapros that are at the gate hand sanitized, and the drivers are still, they have been hand sanitizing the kids on the buses. Okay, please make sure, excuse me, please make sure that you're vigilant with your kids with the hand washing and hand sanitizing like we were last year. Okay, we know it's easy to get lax, but just please make sure they wash before lunch, after lunch. And obviously, if you see kids who don't look well, just send them to the office. And it's the same thing. If they have fevers, they go home regardless. That's always been our routine. So just make sure that you're just being extra vigilant on kids if they don't look well. And also, like we're saying, if they cough and choke on a sip of water, don't panic and send them to the nurse. Like if it's a constant continued cough, then definitely you want to send them. Okay?
I have a question about that. Because I know some kids that are my students, they have left, and in last year we had the protocol that they would go and clean the desks and stuff. I know that there are some other students just because they had contact with that, but if we're sending them home, we should clean the desks as well. You know, I did, but you know, in the past that we had the students coming, and also.
Listen, please. Thank you.
I know they were coming, so it's just for clarification. In the past, we had the students go to the office, and now the parents have to test them. If they were negative, they would come back. So now we have to test in the office. They test sometimes negative, and they still need to.
So no matter what, and this is what our conversation was with Maureen too, because whether you're tested on the 5th day, 6th, 7th, you still can't come back until the 8th day. So even if it's the 5th day and they're negative, they can't come back until that 8th day. So it doesn't matter that parents, we'd rather them get tested probably on the 7th day and know that they're negative still to come back on the 8th day. But some parents just want to know, because if your kids are symptomatic, you still want to know because you can be infecting other kids. For cleaning of the desk, please, if you need more wipes, let us know so that we can get them to you, and kids can help wipe down. One thing with Pima County is they are giving us 24 hours to send them the close contacts. Then they will contact families, but that could be 3 or 4 days of the students sitting in your room. So we're going to continue to do our own contact tracing like we were, but Deanna and Maureen have a script, and if it gets a little bit out of control, we may like say, Lourdes, can you please follow the script and call these 5 parents from your classroom? Because it takes time, and if we can divide and conquer, we can nip it faster.
Are we still sending home siblings with
No.
the other person?
No.
Okay.
No. So siblings don't have to go home, but it's just the one that has, unless the siblings start to show symptoms, then obviously we'll test them and send them home. Okay, but that's why we have to just be more
Don't
vigilant now.
siblings, if they test positive, the sibling, because
Yes,
it's close
but-
contact then. So
Yes.
let's clarify.
Yes. Okay, say it again?
If they're positive, the sibling will have to go home. But if it's a close contact,
Right.
so like if my daughter Chloe was close contact, Miley would not have to go home.
But if Chloe tests,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
so close contacts are not being sent home, siblings of positive kids are going home, okay? Yes,
It's also a 90-day thing, if they tested, if they had COVID within 90 days, they don't have to be quarantined.
they can come back, it
Yeah.
depends if they're
They're
on
close
that day.
contact, yeah.
Close contact,
So that
yes,
was a glitch we didn't realize.
yes, okay.
If staff are sent home, because like I have kids here, and if we are sent home, does that take up still our own personal stuff? or
Yes,
is
I'm
it-
glad you brought that up, because we, the COVID funds to pay staff members to stay home is no longer in effect. So if you have to stay home and quarantine, it will be coming out of your sick day or your personal days or your time. Okay, so we're working on just trying to keep everybody healthy, so, keep up the good work. Okay, because you guys are awesome. And, okay.
Are there any funds to buy microphones if we wear a mask? Because I am not apparently understandable when I'm wearing a mask.
Okay, we'll look into that, okay? We'll look into that. Because I know we did have the shields for cases, but I know some teachers don't like them and we're uncomfortable, but. So just, if you have any other thoughts, write them down and give them to Deanna and I before the end of the meeting, or send us an email if you think of anything, but I don't want to waste time with Beyond Textbooks, because we have Chelsea here with some great information. I'll let you just introduce and tell them about yourself, okay? Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Thanks for having me out today. I'm Chelsea Scopoletti with Beyond Textbooks, right up the road in the Vale School District. Really excited to be here today. I've been out here a few times, but it's been a number of years, so really excited to be back today. Sounds like you had a little bit of a bonus extra work day this morning. Hopefully you were able to make the most of that. Well, kind of a crazy time going right now between the weather and the COVID and all of the things. So thanks for coming together and taking a couple of hours with me this afternoon. I'll tell you a little bit more about who I am and about Vale School District and who we are Beyond Textbooks here in just a moment. You do have the bell work up on the board or the screen. If you would, does anybody not have a blue packet and a green name tag? All right, I'll come around. I appreciate that, thank you. Keep the extras too, I forget a few other extras out here. So if you would take just a moment, and on your green name tag, go ahead and fold it for me. Those of you in chairs, I know it's kind of hard to find a spot for them, and if you don't, that's okay, but I'd love to know who you are. And I've asked you to write just three things. Number one is your name. Nice and large, if you don't mind, so I can see it. I'm trying to be good about kind of keeping my distance, maybe a little bit more than I was maybe 2 years ago. But I'd still like to see your names as possible. Also, if you indicate your grade level, your role, content, what it is that you do here in Continental, I'd appreciate that. And then one thing that you know about Beyond Textbooks. You can put that kind of at the bottom of your name tag or on the backside, wherever. Just one thing maybe that you know about BT. By the way, BT is kind of brand new here. You haven't really scratched the surface yet. That's okay too, but indicate something for me if you would. I'll give everybody about a minute, maybe 90 seconds. If you're able to find a spot where I can see that name tag, it's appreciated. And then we'll get rolling here in our next. Perfect.
There's still some extras out there. If not, just let me know. I can send you the packet in case for the people who are at home if they want that too.
Yeah, I have the extras left. I walked around, but I think everybody has it.
Just, you can let me know anytime. You can always send me the version.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're going to go ahead and jump in. We have a very short 2 hours together this afternoon. So I want to make sure to make the most of your time. I know it's already, it might feel kind of long, but it's going to go by really quickly, and I'm going to, again, just be really respectful of your time. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. We're going to start with our blue handout packet. We will get to computers shortly, so if you're kind of organizing your space, just know that there are some places to take some notes in here, so you'll want to have this kind of near you. Again, I'm Chelsea Scopoletti. This is our Beyond Textbooks team on the slide behind me. One thing to know, and for some of you, this is going to be a little bit of a review, a few of the things that we talked about this morning or this afternoon. But some of this might be kind of new to some of you as well. So I'd just like to point out as a reminder that the Beyond Textbooks team, we're employees of the Vail School District, just right down the road, about a 45-minute drive from here. We're not a private textbook company or a private company of any sort. We're all educators, just like you are. My experience comes out of the middle school classroom. Where are my middle, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers? All right, so I always taught 7th and 8th grade, language arts and social studies. I actually taught in the Northern California area, moved kind of home to Tucson where I was born and raised, and started teaching in the Vail School District. Continued teaching for a few more years, and then I became a student achievement teacher in our district when we opened up Vail Academy in high school, if you're familiar with it, right off of I-10 near Cold there. That was is a K-12 school that we opened. It's a little bit of a different model. So I served as a student achievement teacher. It's kind of a curriculum coordinator position that we have at the school site level. So served in that role kindergarten through 12th grade, and then came over to Beyond Textbooks just over 10 years ago now, when it was kind of just shifting, or had just shifted from these are the things we do in Vail to, oh, some other groups are now borrowing this and are using this, and we probably should do some trainings and that kind of thing. So I've been with BT for most of the time that we've been sharing outside of our own district. So like I said, I've been here to Continental a good handful of times, but it's been a while, so I'm really excited to kind of come back in front of you today and touch base on Beyond Textbooks. So everybody in here, I'm sure, has kind of different background knowledge in terms of BT. And so I've designed our time together this afternoon to be, again, for some of you, some review, but some new stuff as well. And for others of you, maybe more of it will be new. I won't spend a lot of time on everybody else there on our team, but if you get the newsletters, you're familiar maybe with Justin Chesborough's name. You've probably heard from Kevin Carney over the years if you've been here for a while. If you add your own resources to Beyond Textbooks, you'll hear likely from Kristen King. But again, just everybody up there, we're educators, we've been classroom teachers before coming over to Beyond Textbooks. We're still employees of a public school district right down the road. So really glad to be here. Here is our agenda for the day, and you have this on the inside cover of your blue packet on that very front page. So if you'd like to kind of check things off as we go along, feel free to check things off on the inside cover here. One thing I do want to mention, in addition to the agenda on the inside cover, is over on the left-hand side, everybody that you saw our pictures up there on the screen, our direct email addresses and office phone numbers are here as well. So again, I'm Chelsea. I'm just less than halfway down the road there. Feel free to circle my name if you'd like. One of the things, I'll speak about this before we close this afternoon, but we are always here for support. So after I'm gone today, this afternoon, if tomorrow, it's next week, it's next month, if you have a question with Beyond Textbooks, we really encourage you to reach out, and see wonderful ways to do so. So I want you to know that email addresses are there for you. So what are we going to do this afternoon? We're doing our introductions and our goal for today right now, so soon you'll be able to check that right off the list. I'm going to talk about our Beyond Textbooks pyramid, and a big picture, where did it come from? And then I'm going to identify the 7 key starting points of Beyond Textbooks. So these That second and third agenda item are kind of the 30,000 foot view. What is beyond textbook? When we're talking about BT, what is it? And again, for some of you, you'll be able to go, yeah, just checking my prior knowledge. Maybe I've got that down. For some of you, that'll be new. After that, we'll spend probably more than half of our 2 hours on the BT website. And I have that broken down into some pieces that I'll do some modeling of things live on the website and then stop and have you find those things on the website yourself. And then do some help desk. Again, what do you do if you have questions about BT after today? And then we'll close up no later than that 3 o'clock time frame. So those are our goals for the day. What questions can I answer about our time together?
So I don't have my login.
Okay.
Anybody else has that problem, but I tried and I asked for a reset and I don't know if anybody else has that problem, but
Okay.
I emailed them.
Okay, no, that's a great question. I'm glad you said that because you're right. There's probably other people in the room as well. If you have your Beyond Textbooks login, that's what you will use today. If you don't, or you try to reset for whatever reason, I actually have a demo login that you can use today that's connected to your calendar. And then what we talked about is make sure that Deanna knows that you need a login, and she can give that to us. And just so that everybody knows, if that's you, if you're sitting here going, yep, I'm going to use the demo today, and then I'll let Deanna know, what will happen is probably this afternoon, maybe tomorrow at the latest, you'll get an email to your school email, but it won't come from Beyond Textbooks. And that's what I say. I don't want you to think that it's spam or junk. In fact, you might even need to check in your spam folder. It's going to come from a company called OneLogin. O-N-E, O-N-E, not the number, word one, login. So keep your eye out for that. That email will have a link, and you'll click on that link. It'll ask you what you want your password to be. You'll create whatever password you want, and then you'll be good to go. All right? So glad you brought that up. If a couple days go by, you haven't gotten that email, again, you have our email. Just email me directly. We will get you set up with your own. And until then, you can use the demo login. All right? Good question. I'm glad you asked. And I'll make sure you know what that demo login is when we get to the website. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in with who we are in Vail. I'm going to share just a little bit of background because I think it's important as you're thinking about, why do we use this Beyond Textbooks thing, or what is this Beyond Textbooks thing I'm being asked to use in my classroom. Some background is important. I'm going to go big picture and I'm going to go kind of quickly, but I think there's some value in it. In our school district, we're right down the road, we're 400 square miles. We have some good success. We have, all of our regular schools were A-rated the last time that we got that rating. We'll see if that continues or when we get that rating again. We've got some #1 elementary schools, some #1 middle schools. We're pretty successful out in the Vail School District. But it hasn't always been that way, and this is important. So this is 2002. We gave the Ames assessment back in the olden days here, right? The state scores here on the left, and then Vail on the right. And this is one grade level, one subject area. We were not doing well as a state. We were doing even worse in the Vail School District. During this time, we were really one of the lower performing districts in Arizona, and certainly in southern Arizona. We were really struggling. What we realized, this is before Beyond Textbooks was a thing, right? What we realized at that time when leadership came together and said, wow, we really are happy with less than 20% of our students learning what we're spending all of our time and energy teaching, and we weren't. And what we realized is that we had teachers working really hard and doing good things, and we had leaders who were doing a great job of leading their sites, and good community, and good families, and good facilities. We had really good things in place, but we didn't have any consistency. We had arrows kind of going in every direction. So we set out, just within our own district, to fix this problem. And we did. We put some things into place. The state got better. We got even better, right? We got to a point where all of the grades and subject areas, this is really indicative of all of the tested grades and subject areas, our students were scoring in the 80th and 90th percentiles across the board. So our demographics didn't change, but the way we do things changed. And this framework that we put into place is what allowed us to support our students into higher achievement. We also were honored to be named the #1 school district in Arizona for a couple of consecutive years. Actually, in 2013, we were bumped out of #1, which was kind of sad. But does anybody know who took over the #1 spot from us? You remember from PT Lore or
I wish it was Continental. It was actually the Benson School District, not too much further south than us. Huge bummer, right? Because nobody likes to be number 2. But they were our first Beyond Textbooks partner, so we were excited for them as well as we were sad for ourselves. And then one of the things that we found just over time is that this framework, because it is a flexible framework of Beyond Textbooks, it's successful in large districts, in very small districts, rural districts, city districts, a number of the high achieving districts, you'll see these are just the top 2 for these variety of sizes, are Beyond Textbooks partners. And so we've just found over time through our work and through a kind of formal study that an organization did a couple of years ago, that an organization, regardless of demographics, regardless of size, if an organization works with fidelity and is engaged with it, then math and reading scores increase, period. And it's not just the math and reading piece, that's the part that is assessed by the state, but all of the content areas contribute to that and support that. So I can certainly give you that study if you need some light reading before bed one of these evenings, but the point being, we found it works if it's used with fidelity and if it's used with engagement. And the reason that it works is that it does this. It takes all of those arrows that were going in every direction and it puts them together and adds some consistency. What I'd like to ask, and feel free just to shout out, what do you notice about the arrows on the screen? They're going in the same direction, I heard, great. I see some visuals, they're going up. What else?
They're all different.
They're all different, and that's intentional, and that's important. And I appreciate you sharing that. They're all different for a reason, and they're different because sometimes people will hear about Beyond Textbooks, or if it's brand new, and think, okay, so this is gonna be my script. I'm gonna be given a script, my classroom's gonna look just like every other classroom at my grade level. That uses BT, it's going to create, cookie cutter classrooms or robot teachers, and it absolutely does. Absolutely doesn't. There's so much room for teacher creativity, and I'll be talking about those things throughout. I actually found when I came from California to Vail that I was able to be more creative and create better lesson plans because I had this framework to work within, and I'll be talking about those things. So if that's a concern, if BT is new to you, and if that's a little bit of a concern, lower that anxiety and know that that's not the intention and that's not the case. It's not to decrease teacher creativity and what you do in the classroom and your professionalism and knowing your students. It actually increases those pieces. So what is this framework that I'm talking about? I'm going to speak to these pieces. Beyond Textbooks used to be like this. Anybody have a drawer that looks like this at home? Yeah, I definitely do. This could be a picture of my drawer in my house. It's not, but it very easily could be. It used to be this, and what I mean by that is that everything was just kind of a jumble. We had all these programs in place, we had all these things, and they were thrown in, and people kind of pick and choose what they wanted to do. Arrows going in every direction, right? When we came to improve, we wanted to organize it. So we used, kind of the image of that silverware organizer. We really needed curriculum, instruction, assessment, intervention, to have their own lanes but still work together. And that's where the Beyond Textbooks kind of pyramid comes from, is all of these pieces, all of these departments in the Vail School District working together in an organized fashion. So on page 1 you have an image of the entire pyramid and all 4 pieces. On page 2 you have a blown up version of the curriculum side of the pyramid. And that's what I'd like to point you to at this point. And I'm not going to spend time today, so each side of the pyramid, and you can even see this on page 1 there, each side of the pyramid has 5 or 6 different layers, right? Beyond Textbooks is 7 pieces total, for the most part, right? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about every layer of each side of the pyramid, but I am going to start with identifying of everything that we do, of everything that you do, everything that the collective we do in education, what makes up Beyond Textbooks. And I'd like to start on page 2 and ask you, I didn't give you the notes that you have to write notes in for because I wanted to save some time today, but I do want you to take a look at page 2 and kind of draw these arrows or check marks, indicate that on this curriculum side of the pyramid, all 5 of these pieces make up Beyond Textbooks. Of the 7 starting points of BT, 5 of them are on the curriculum side of the pyramid, and they're where you see those arrows. So the first starting point of Beyond Textbooks is this idea of essential standards, right? Identifying what students must learn at any given grade level content area. So draw an arrow or a number 1 next to it, because that's the first starting point of Beyond Textbooks. The second starting point of Beyond Textbooks is an unwrapped document, identifying for each essential standard, what does mastery mean, or what does good enough look like. So that unwrapped document is the second starting point. The third starting point, again, every single one of this particular side of the pyramid, the third starting point is the idea of a curriculum calendar. So once we know exactly what we want students to learn at that grade level for that content, and exactly what those standards mean with the unwrapped document, the calendar identifies how do we fit it all in over the course of a school year. Right? What order do we teach it in? How long do we spend on it so that we get to all of those standards? So that's the third starting point. The fourth starting point is a little bit more of a philosophy than a specific thing, and it's this idea of specific materials. So it's, again, once we know what the standard is that we're teaching, exactly what it means to be in our documents, when I'm teaching it, about how long I'm spending on it in the calendar, specific materials is intentionally seeking out materials and resources that are going to work best for my students. You're going to seek out the ones that are going to work best for your students, right? So it's the idea of intentionally looking for resources and materials to use in your classroom to support those first 3 starting points. And then the fifth starting point is the idea of the BT website. That's kind of the electronic version where all these pieces are housed, and I'll be sharing a lot about that today as well. The first 5 starting points are all on the curriculum side of here. There's only 7 in total. So when we're talking about Beyond Textbook, it's largely a curriculum framework. All right? If we flip to page 3, you're going to see the instructional side of the pyramid. And there's no arrows on this slide. None of this specifically makes up Beyond Textbooks. These are things that I'm sure look familiar to you. They're things that I was trained on before I was in the classroom and was supporting training while I was in the classroom. For example, classroom management. I knew and I was strongly encouraged, hey, you've got to have good, solid classroom management. It's the foundation of what you do. If you want to get anything else done, you got to have that classroom management in place, right? But how I was to manage my classroom was left up to me. What was going to work best for me. I was given some training, some ideas certainly, but hey, you go and do your classroom management. How, when I pulled in different Marzano strategies, or when I did cooperative learning and how I did that, that was left up to me as a teacher. The instructional pieces are left up to the classroom teacher. So 5 starting points so far, all on curriculum. Instructional pieces look familiar, I'm sure. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that today because those aren't specific to Beyond Textbooks. The 6th starting point is on page 4. It's a sliver of assessment. So one piece of the assessment side of the pyramid, and it's this idea of common formative assessment. So this is starting point number 6. Quick check in math and reading to see if students are learning what we're teaching. Right, so it's the idea of common formative assessment. It's the second layer on the layer. Now, as you can see, it's certainly not the only thing that we do to assess students. In Vail, we're giving quarterly benchmarks, kind of that summative on a quarterly level to see if they're retaining pieces. We do progress monitoring. That's more fluency assessment, how quickly are students reading, and doing math problems and things of that nature. Can't do, won't do, individual progress monitoring. There's other ways that you're assessing in the classroom. And there's even a ton of ways that we're assessing even less formally than would be on this pyramid, right? We're assessing students all the time. But the part that makes up Beyond Textbooks is that common formative assessment. So that's the 6th starting point. I know we're flipping pages quickly right off the bat here, but the 7th starting point is on page 5. And it's the foundation of the intervention side of the pyramid. It's this idea of reteach and enrich. It's the 7th starting point. There's other things that we do to intervene, but it's the first thing that we do to intervene. It's a response to formative data, and it's something that we do school-wide in each of our school sites in Vail. It's done a little bit differently everywhere, but everywhere, as a response to formative data, students are given either reteach or enrichment to help support and help grow them regardless of where they're at on that particular standard. So that's the 7th starting point. Again, there's other things that we do if that isn't working, or to continue to intervene and support students, but that's kind of the first, the catch-all, and the 7th starting point. So again, I know I'm going quickly here, but I just want to kind of paint the picture, big picture. What is Beyond Textbooks? It's 7 things. 5 of them are curriculum, strong curriculum framework, little sliver of assessment, little sliver of intervention. Why these 7? If you look at page 6, you have these questions, and of all of the slides that I'll show you today, I would almost say this is the most important one. So this gentleman is Rick DeFore. If you're familiar with professional learning communities, you're familiar with Rick DeFore. He literally wrote the book on PLCs. When our arrows were going in every direction and we were really looking to improve, we certainly didn't do it on our own, right? None of these things are brand new fail. We went to workshops and read books and did research and tried to, go to the people who had the experience. And we came across Rick DeFore and his work, and one of the things that he says is that if a school or a district or any organization can answer just these 4 questions consistently being an important term there, right? Same answers classroom to classroom. Just these 4 questions, then their students are going to be in good shape in terms of their academic achievement. When our arrows were going in every direction, we didn't have similar answers to any of these questions. I might have had answers in my classroom, and the teacher next door might have had answers, but they're not the same answers. So our arrows were going in different directions. The questions are, I'm just going to kind of paraphrase a little bit. Question 1, exactly what is it we want students to learn? Question 2, how will we know when they've learned it? Question 3, what do we do if they haven't learned it or haven't learned it yet? And question 4, what do we do when they have learned it? So we set out to answer just these 4 questions, but again, to have consistent answers so that everybody at 4th grade was giving the same answers. Everybody who taught Algebra 1 was giving the same answers to these 4 questions. The 7 starting points is what ended up answering these 4 questions. So don't feel like you have to flip back at all, but question number 1 is answered now with the curriculum side of our pyramid, right? For kindergarten social studies, what do we want students to learn? Every kindergarten social studies is going to have the same essential standards. For 4th grade science, what do we want students to learn? It's all going to be the same. And we've got some more answers to that now. Unwrapped documents, defining what does master, what does that standard mean? Curriculum calendar, how much information are we giving students about each of those? Materials and the website, right? So the first 5 starting points answer that first question, exactly what is it we want students to learn. We set out to answer Rick DeFore's second question, how will we know if they've learned it? Well, now we have a tried and true common formative assessment in math and reading, so we know I can teach creatively, try some new materials, different instructional strategies, try something new. And then I'm not writing my own test or quiz, right, which I always used to second guess. Did I just make that really easy? Is that why all of my kids passed? Or, ooh, none of my kids passed. I probably wrote it was probably too hard. I'll just move on. I know which students have it and which students don't. And then questions 3 and 4, what do we do when students haven't learned it yet? We have reteach in place now. We have a support for those students during the school day. What do we do when students have learned it? We have enrich now. We're trying to still continue to push and challenge and grow those students during the school day. So that's where the 7 key starting points came from, is answering Rick DeFore's 4 questions. Really big picture. Kind of all of the things that we do in education and paring it down to what is beyond textbooks. What is our lane in terms of beyond textbooks? What questions do you have about the pyramid itself? Take 30, 45 seconds maybe, and just with somebody that you're sitting right next to, turn, it can be a group of 2, small group of 3. One thing that maybe is either a new learning or maybe a good reminder for you about the information that I shared so far. Just a new learning or a good reminder. Find one thing, if you would, share it with somebody right next to you. We're going to come back together in less than 1 minute. Wait, countdown works no matter if we're talking about little or talking about adults, doesn't it? Did any questions come up about big picture things that I shared during your conversation? I'm gonna make it easy on me, I'm gonna allow that.
Okay, we talked about the common assessments, because that's a big issue with me, is these, you give them a big full-blown test and they setting them up for failure. When you're assessing, you can just simply look at their notebooks, and there's just all these other different ways to assess, rather than have to give them a full-blown test. That a lot of them do.
Are you saying that the formatives are a full-blown test that a lot of them are gonna fail, or are you talking about everything?
Yeah, no, I'm talking, if you give them a comprehensive test, big after just a week or so, or 2 weeks, a lot of them are gonna miss gaps, so they're not gonna do well.
Sure, sure, and that, you bring up a good point in terms of assessing and assessment in general. I strongly feel like you want to take a really comprehensive look at what students are doing to identify, have they learned what I've taught? So if that means, our formatives are 5 questions, do it pretty quick, and we only do those in math and reading so that we're not kind of over-assessing students with paper and pencil assessments. But they give one good snapshot. I used to also, like you said, look at notebooks, look at classwork, maybe homework a little bit less depending on, who maybe was doing that homework. But I really think taking a good comprehensive look at what the students are doing is important. And so that's why, I'm glad you brought that up. That's why we show you kind of that whole piece of, we do a lot of different things with assessment, and you're gonna do a lot of different things with assessment. The BT formative is one piece of that. It's not meant to be the only way that you're assessing students, by all means. Good comment. Good comment. What I'd like to do now is actually dive into just those 7 pieces in just a little bit more detail. I'm really cognizant of our time. We have a short period of time together this afternoon, so I'm just going to talk briefly, but just a little bit more specifically about just those 7 starting points. So in your handout packet on page 7, you have a list of the 7 starting points. There's just some space there in case there's something you want to jot down. So I don't have a ton of additional notes for you. There's a couple of things that I'll refer to, so you'll do a little bit of flipping in terms of your paper, but if there's something that you want to write down, it's here. Plus, even if there's not, you have that good list on page 7 of what the 7 starting points are, and just those 7. So I'm going to speak to each of those, again, just with a little bit of background and a little bit of how they all fit together. All right, so starting with the first 3 starting points, because these 3 really work kind of hand in hand together. So we're going to start on the curriculum side of the pyramid, starting from the bottom, kind of that foundation, and working our way up. With that first starting point is this idea of essential standards. What I want to share about essential standards are that vocabulary, that they're called essential standards on Beyond textbooks. Now, sometimes you might have heard them called power standards or priority standards. The idea is the same. It's the idea of taking all of the standards that were given by the state and saying which ones are going to be the priority for this grade level and this content area. Because if we're going to teach them all with the same level of priority, we're in coverage mode, barely, right? We're scratching the surface. So the idea here from Robert Marzano and from other great researchers is teach fewer standards, teach them better. Have more time to dive into those standards. Now keep in mind, and I'm going to throw a little bit of vocabulary at you. If you want to write it down, great. If you don't, that's okay. We can't just get rid of standards, right? The state says we have to teach them all. We do teach them all. We don't give them the same weight. So when we're talking about priority, essential standards are the priority standards that we teach to mastery. We assess in a variety of ways, and we keep track on those standards with our students. Standards that are not essential, on BT at least, you'll see them called additional standards. So again, in your vocabulary, if you've used other programs that are maybe not beyond textbooks or in schooling or whatever, they've been called supplemental, they've been called secondary standards, there's, I'm sure, a variety of other terms for them. On BT, they're called additional standards. So when you see that term, you know what that means. And those standards we teach, but we introduce them and we move on. Or probably that standard that's an additional at your grade level is probably an essential at a different grade level. So over time, students will get that at a mastery level. It's not your priority. Your priority are the essentials. What you see up here on the screen is a group of teachers coming together to do this work. Whenever there's curriculum work to be done, it's not the 8 of us and beyond textbooks. I was a part of this curriculum work when it came to middle school language arts when I was in the classroom. But I wouldn't be the right person to ask for, hey, come and do this, choose the second grade essential standards, right? So we always call together classroom teachers who are currently in a classroom, kind of the expert of that grade level content area, and they're the ones who do this work. And our curriculum department leads it, gives some great attributes. They want to make how to go about choosing essential standards, but everything within BT is really kind of that teacher-driven grassroots organization. Okay, so teachers are coming together to choose the essentials and to identify from, which from the entire group of standards, which are essentials and which are additional standards. A few of your grade levels will also have a yearly standards, if you see something called the yearly standards. And those are standards that as soon as you'll see them, you'll know exactly why, if it's at your grade level, where you're supporting that standard throughout the entire school year, and that's why it's called yearly. Most of the reading standards will have a yearly, or reading grades, I should say, will have a standard that's essentially something along the lines of the student will read and comprehend, literature at their grade level. We're doing that all year long, right? Trying to get to mastery for sure, but doing that all year long. Majority of the standards are going to be essential standards or additional standards. So that's the first starting point. Taking all of the standards that we're given and streamlining. What's our priority for our grade level and my content area? Those are going to be the essential standards. From there, we move into starting point number 2, which is an unwrapped document. And there's an unwrapped document created for every essential standard on BT. This work's already done. And you'll have an example on pages 8, 9, and 10 that I'll go through. If you want to kind of flip back and forth, feel free. If you feel comfortable and you've seen these before and you already use them, it's up to you if you look at it or not. But an unwrapped document is an explicit description of the essential standard. We don't put the effort in and do these for additional standards because we're just introducing them and moving on. But now that we're teaching fewer standards at that priority or at that mastery level, we really want to make sure that we have same answers to what does that standard mean. And that's where the unwrapped document comes in. So the example that you have in your packet and that I have on the screen, it happens to be a 5th grade math, kind of middle of the road, if you will. Standard itself is at the top. The part that's in bold is what we call student-friendly language of the standard. In our district, we always have our standard. Do you post your standards in your classrooms? We do too, and we always post the student-friendly language, because if we're going to post it might as well be in language that the students understand, right? So we make sure all the standards are written in that student-friendly language. In math, reading, and writing, the state has provided this rubric piece in the middle, so we thought it was a really great tool, so we added it to the unwrapped document in the grade levels that it's provided by the state. These are called the performance level descriptors, or PLDs, and we love acronyms because we're in education and everything is abbreviated. And essentially, it's a rubric that says, here's what a student needs to do to show that they are proficient, highly proficient, minimally, etc. Right? So you can kind of identify where are my students starting and what's it going to take to move up a level or 2 levels. Okay? If you look at page 9, you see a section, this is kind of back to any content area now. Top left, this was always my vocabulary. That section that says concepts and nouns was always my vocabulary list. That's the academic vocabulary that I knew I wanted students to have a good working knowledge with by the time I could say, yes, we've got it on this standard. I also knew that there would be a similar standard at the next grade level, and that teacher was going to expect them to come in with knowledge of those particular academic vocabulary terms. So how I would teach it, totally up to me. And it would vary for sure from one standard to the next, but I knew I wanted them to be confident in those terms. We have skills or verbs. What do students need to do to master this standard? And then at this particular grade level, in this case 5th grade, what level of rigor are we trying to hit? We've got Bloom's levels identified, and then Webb's DOK, that depth of knowledge level identified as well. You're going to see a section of big ideas. This is always where I would start when I was pulling up a new unwrapped document to do my lesson planning, to start a new standard. I always started with those big ideas because it's just that, it's a big idea. What does this standard really mean in student-teacher-friendly language? You're going to see a section of essential questions. This is mastery learning, right, this document. So by the time, as an indication of mastery, students should be able to answer those questions, certainly in their own words, articulated in their own way. And they may not be able to get there on day 1 or day 2, but by the time for you to say, yes, we got it, we've mastered this standard, that's an indication, it's an informal way to assess students on, are we in fact pretty close to mastery on this standard. These next 2 sections are true for math only. The common misconception, where do students often make mistakes in the standard? And the state says, hey, teach these 8 standards for mathematical practices, kind of procedural pieces. Teach these 8 as often as you can throughout all of your academic standards. The ones that go most nicely with this particular essential standard are indicated there as well. So that's that standards for mathematical practices piece. Last piece of the unwrapped document, this is a big, heavy document. There's a lot to it. The final piece is on page 10. And this is a performance task model product example. It's again that indication of mastery learning. I really like this as a classroom teacher because it's a quick check. You can drill into this standard, but it's not multiple choice. So I would sometimes add this to a homework assignment towards the end of my calendar time, or put it up on the board and give kids a post-it and have it as an exit ticket, just to informally even without their names on it, just get that informal, hey, I feel like we're pretty close to mastery, am I right? And then you can kind of, test the waters with your students that way, before doing any sort of, written formative type assessment. So everything on the unwrapped document, I like to think of it as, if you type in Google Maps on your phone and you're taking a road trip, this is your destination. This is where you want to get. How you get there, how you get students there, is up to you. Right? The path that you take is up to you. But this is that indication of mastery learning, so it's a planning tool. It's something I would always print out and have right next to me while I was doing my lesson planning. It is not, however, a lesson plan, because it doesn't tell you how to get there. It doesn't say what materials to use, which instructional strategies to use, and that type of thing. That was the second starting point. What are the priority standards? What do those priority standards really mean on a deeper level? Third starting point, curriculum calendar. How do we fit it all in the course of a school year? Right? So in terms of the calendar, this is what it looks like. I'll show you this kind of live on the website here shortly. A couple of things in terms of the calendar itself. Number 1, this is also still created by those teachers sitting around the table in the room. This is teacher created. They take a look at what all the standards are, what they mean, and then they put it in an order that makes the most sense to them collaboratively, shoulder to shoulder with others that teach that same grade level, and give durations to it. There's flexibility within the calendar, 100%. But it's kind of like a budget, right? It's that family budget to keep you on track. And if you overspend in one area, you need to kind of pull back in another area so that you finish by the end of the school year. In grades 3 and up, in math and reading, the calendar finishes before the assessment date, the state assessment date. Because unfortunately, we don't assess kids on the last day of the school year. Right? So we want to make sure they're exposed to everything that they're going to be expected to know on the test. So there's grade level and content choices you can choose on the left. You can look at a variety of different time spans. You can look at, it gives you the recommended duration. Again, there's flexibility here. And the other thing I'll share, when I'm driving, I pulled up my Google Maps, I'm driving across the country, wherever, right? I might choose one path. A different group of teachers might choose a different path. You have to go on the same path with the people who are in the same car as you, right? But not as everybody else. So what I mean by that is we give you your Beyond Textbooks calendar. If you, as an organization, not individual teachers, any organization, you can modify your calendar with a customization piece. So we've had different districts say, hey, we really like this other program, we want to match the two together, can we reorder our calendar? Comes from your administration, and we can work with you on that. Your calendar doesn't have to look the same as ours, but you want to make sure that it looks the same as everybody in your organization. Now, the first 3 starting points. We're flying through the 7 starting points. We're still working our way up the curriculum side of the pyramid. I want to touch base on specific materials on the BT website. So I said those first 3 really work hand in hand. Those are the 3 pieces that are created, already done for you by the teachers in the room. This 4th one now really is kind of down to individual classroom teachers. These fourth piece is really up to you. It's the idea of specific materials. Now that you know what the essential standard is for this upcoming week or 10 days or whatever the case may be, you have the unwrapped document defining what mastery looks like. Calendar told you about how long to spend on it. Now it's time to seek out materials that are going to work best for your students. There are resources on Beyond Textbooks. I'll show you this today. You say, hey, start there. But please know that's not the only place to look for resources. And that's, by the way, not the vision. It's not the hope of Beyond Textbooks that it'll ever be one-stop shopping or everything that you could possibly need. There's really great stuff out there. We're still Googling things all the time. There's some great resources out there popping up that are free and that are good quality. We still use textbooks. We're not against textbooks in any way. In our district, we don't use the textbook cover to cover, like start on page 1 and see how far you get. We use our calendar first, and then we go to that textbook and see if there's resources in there that will support students. There were many times as a classroom teacher that I pulled out that class set of textbooks and we used it, but it wasn't the guiding force. Other resources that you have that you've used in the past, you've created, resources can come really from anywhere. We just say make sure it's congruent to the standard, the correct level of rigor. It's going to help get students from where they are to the level on that unwrapped document. Teachers control the how of teaching. This is why all those arrows look different on that slide. Because I might teach it very differently than you do, very differently than you do. And that's okay. We have different kids in our classes, right? Teachers control the how of teaching. Fifth starting point, BT website, where these pieces are housed. So I showed you this calendar before. This is a 7th grade reading example. This calendar will become the curriculum guide. So the way it works, and I'll show you this live in a little bit as well, is you go to your calendar, say, okay, this is my essential standard that I'm going to be teaching for about 10 days. And there's a link on all of this. So you click on the BT link, and this becomes your curriculum guide. So at the top of the page, you have the student-friendly language of the standard, because again, that's the one we want to really focus on. And then you have all of your curriculum documents. Whoops, I clicked too fast, sorry. Your curriculum document. So that planning tool that I talked about, that unwrapped document, top first thing, all right, top left. There's other curriculum documents going to be across the top here as well. I'll talk about formatives in a little bit. Those are going to be there. Other curriculum documents that apply to different grade level and subject areas. Anything in that curriculum document section, I encourage you to check out and to use the best you can. Some of them have just that. Some of them have rubrics. There's analytical math tasks. There's a variety of things that vary from grade level to grade level. That unwrapped document, though, is going to be there for sure for your core content areas. As you scroll down the page, now you come to that idea of specific materials, teacher-submitted resources. So you have a page where there's a variety of things that have been shared by teachers around the country who said, I use that unwrapped document as a lesson plan. This is how I taught this standard. I felt like it worked for my students. Here it is. We have it grouped into some different kind of buckets, if you will, ideas, websites, worksheets, full formal lesson plans, any variety of things. So you can kind of pick and choose what you're going to want, what might work for your kids. You match this with other things that you have, again, Google, textbooks, other resources, and put together what's going to work best for your students to get them to that unwrapped document. When you click on one of these, for example, right here, there's a lesson plan. You can see it just kind of highlighted that. What happens is you come to another page that has the title of the resource, the teacher and their district who shared it, and then a variety of any attachments that that teacher has shared will be in a variety of formats. So if you use a PC computer and you want to edit things, I highly encourage you to get the editable version for your computer. If you run Word and PowerPoint, download those. If you're on a Mac, at home or wherever, and you do Pages and Keynote, read those. We have everything in PDF so that it opens really quickly so you can at least look at it first before downloading anything. And then more recently, we've been adding everything into Google links as well. So you can copy it into your Google Drive and use it that way if that's something that's of interest to you. And these are all vetted resources that real teachers who use Beyond Textbooks have shared. Quick look at the current partners. We're still largely in Arizona because we're Arizona born and raised right down the road. And when we were using Arizona state standards, it was only in Arizona. So we currently work with over 100 Arizona partners, but with the Common Core standards, we're in about 20 other states now as well. So you can collaborate with teachers from 143, I think is the most current number of different organizations who are teaching those same standards. So it's pretty powerful kind of collaboration. That was the curriculum side of the pyramid. I know I'm going fast. I'm going to pause really quickly before we move into our sliver of assessment and our sliver of intervention. What questions can I answer for you on the curriculum side of the pyramid?
Quick question on the calendars. Are the calendars the essential standards only that are listed on the actual calendar?
Yeah, that is a great question. The question is, on the calendar, is it only the essential standards? Essentially, yes. It's only the essential standards that we calendar out, but about once a month, you'll have a time frame that says additional standards, and that's gonna take you just to a list as a reminder. Don't forget to hit these, and we have those kind of broken down by month, so that the additional standards that go most nicely with essential standards for that, but really you can teach them whenever you want, just that introduction and move on. But for the most part, it's just the essential standards. Great question, thank you. Somebody in the back will ask. Yeah.
I think I figured it out.
Oh, you think you figured it out? All right, if you change your mind, let me know.
The standards that are written on there, they're for the highly proficient students. So, because I know we noticed the one for math in first grade is not what the state standard is. So are they're written as
Yeah,
coming in for the highly proficient?
that's a really great point as well. We always want to shoot for as high as we can get students. So we use the highly proficient language standards. Our unwrapped documents are written to the highly proficient, but the formative assessments are written to proficiency. So we kind of shoot for high proficiency, and we're going to be okay with proficiency, and then continue to try to grow kids from there. Good. Other thoughts? If you have a question, somebody else in the room probably does as well. Research says I wait 8 seconds before moving on after asking a question. I feel like an eternity sometimes. Let's talk about these last 2 starting points, and then we're going to get on the website. So this is kind of that sliver of assessment and that sliver of intervention, not the only way that we're assessing, not the only way that we're intervening, but the pieces that make up beyond textbook. So the first is that idea of common formative assessments. I showed you this, and I really want to show you or really explain kind of the differences between these common formative assessments, because it's been a few years and there have been some changes. So if you teach math or reading, on each essential standard, right after your unwrapped document, you're going to have these 2 columns of common formative assessments. They're in 2 different formats, right? On the left is the PDF version, where you can open it, print it, make copies for your students, paper and pencil, right? One thing I'll mention is that there's always an answer key attached to that, so when you print it and you grab it, take the answer key away before you make copies for your students. And I only speak from experience, because the answer key kind of looks like it's a regular assessment and you don't notice it, but I promise you it's there, and then all your students get 100%, you feel great until you don't. That's the left-hand side of PDF. More recently, 2020, we converted them all to Google formatives as well, Google version. So if you are still, if kids have devices and you want to, we're going to leave them up even once we have, even now we have students back in person. Because a lot of kids have devices, right? So if you want to use it as a Google version and it'll score it for you, feel free to grab that. It'll ask if you want to make a copy into your Google Drive. You do. It's yours, and you push it out to students however you want. They match them. They're the same. Now, in terms of all multiple choice versus extended response, there are some differences. All of our formatives are 5 questions. All multiple choice means all 5 questions are multiple choice. Extended response means 3 of the questions are multiple choice. 2 of them, students are constructing their own response. Right? So, and they might be asked to justify, or what are the steps involved, or compare and contrast. So, just kind of big picture in terms of pros and cons. All multiple choice, faster. Faster for students to take, faster for you to grade, or score them, and then you can do something with that data. Extended response, get some good information. So you know, giving students, number 1, the opportunity of constructing their own responses and justifying and comparing and contrasting. And then you can, as a teacher, really see where exactly maybe they went wrong. So there's not a right or a wrong in our own district. We were all multiple choice. We moved to extended response for a couple of years. That was taking a little bit too long, so now we're doing all multiple choice. I encourage you to, at the very least, at a grade level, give them the same so you can compare your data apples to apples. maybe even as a school site, that's up to you, your conversations to have, but those are the differences between the two. All right? So, we use that data, 5 questions regardless of what format and what version you're given, they're all 5 questions. We use that data to run Reteach and Enrich. That first kind of safety net of intervention. And here's what that looks like. Top left, essential standards, unwrapped documents, curriculum calendar. These are kind of our planning tools. I consider these to be the things that we're doing prior to Monday morning, right? During the week, when you have students in front of you, you're giving that instruction on essential standards. At the end of the calendar time frame, so whether it says 5 days, or it says 10 days, or it says, whatever the case may be, around the last day of that, typically, you'll give that common formative assessment. And I know I'm going to kind of go swing back right now, circle back and talk about calendar, but I think this is important. At this point, the calendar time frame ends. So that standard won't be on the calendar again. But that doesn't mean you're done with the standard. I used to think, holy moly, 5 days to teach that standard, there's no way. Probably no way. 5 days gets me to my initial assessment. Then the calendar doesn't run the show anymore. My data runs the show. So now I say, okay, my data analysis, which student scored at least 4 of those questions correct? We got 4 right, we got 5 right. Those kiddos are ready for enrichment. They're proficient. How can I grow them a little bit more, right? Which students got 3 or fewer of those questions correct? It's okay, we're not there yet. Those students need some reteach. I'm gonna try again in a different way. Maybe they need more time, a little bit of a different strategy, before I give them a second formative assessment. If you'll notice on formative, that's why there were 2 of each category. All right? By the way, we always have targeted support too, and that just refers to that thing that we all do as teachers, of realizing, okay, still have some students who are struggling with the standard that I taught 6 weeks ago. I got a little bit of extra time today, I'm going to pull some over. I'm going to try it again. Maybe if you do like an after-school tutoring, but we keep really targeted. It's just that idea of, wow, we're still struggling. I'm going to take a day and do a mini lesson and bring the standard back. But it's all based on data. You know where your students are on these standards from that formative assessment. I kind of consider it like a scoreboard in a sports game, right? You go and you watch a high school basketball game, you know who's winning, you know what the score is. And that allows the coach to make some changes maybe throughout the game. There was a time in education, 20 years ago, where I knew, at least as a classroom teacher, I knew my score the summer after I let those kids go and I got that needs assessment back. Can't do that much with at that point, right? Doing this formative allowed me to know the score throughout the school year. And make no mistake, I didn't always like the score. Okay? I wasn't always real happy, but I knew which students needed what from me. There's power in that. That was a big picture, kind of quick overview of each of those 7 key starting points. I'd like you to have a conversation. People that you're sitting around as close as you're comfortable, don't get any closer than your comfort level. What's the component that you're looking forward to? What's a question that you have? I'll give you 2 minutes to have a conversation.
to meet with Stacy.
So this week is not, we're not meeting with the programmatic assistants, but I need case managers and counselor to the Zenbe for our meeting, for our weekly meeting.
And for our programmatic assistants, the reason we all need to be here and the reason why it's important that we're all here, is you're a part of this, what we're moving forward with. You need to know, you need to understand. I want you to all have these accounts. You work with our students. You can go in, you can utilize these programs. You can see what's on our calendar, what we're teaching school-wide. You're a part of this. So that's why you are all here. So we're all on the same page. Okay?
All right, and at that time, as those books are heading out, we're gonna come back together. Did any questions come up on the 7:30 points that I can answer for you?
All right, did you do your formatives on a Thursday and then gather the data to plan for the following week?
That's a
Is
great,
that right?
well, did I? No, I did mine on Friday.
So you always did them on Friday?
Yeah, I typically did mine on Friday. If I felt like we were ready on Thursday and then I could give myself that extra day, I would give it on Thursday. That was kind of always my goal. More often than not, I ended up giving it on Friday. But when I was in the classroom, we were giving the 5 multiple choice, so it was a quick grade. I didn't have to. If I was doing the extended response pieces and I needed to dive in a little bit more, I would probably end up giving them on a Thursday. In our district, teachers are given the choice. And it's usually that, late Thursday or, early Friday, so that because it runs our reteach and enrich routines for the week after. So it's kind of up to them when they do it. as long
Oh,
as
for the
they're-
week, okay, so if we gave a district formative this Friday, it's not for the next week, it's for the week after?
We do it for the next week.
So how did you plan that? Like,
Well, we
like-
could plan ahead for what the lessons were going to look like, at least generally.
Okay, so you generally knew, you just didn't know which group?
We just didn't know which kid.
Which kid would go with which group? Okay.
Exactly, we just didn't always know which kid. And once I knew which kids, I would tweak it, because those kids a little bit better. But we would at least know ahead of time which teacher was doing reteach, which teacher was doing enrich, and we'd start thinking through pulling other resources. Like, I almost used this in my class for my initial teaching, but I didn't, but it might work for a reteach. And then those plans would be more solidified as you know what kids are going to be.
Okay.
But if you need to give yourself, as a team, you can, between your grade level team and your administration, you can decide, if you do it Thursday, you give yourself a week, or even if you have that week in between, and you run reteach with a week, a week behind, that's okay, as long as they're getting what they need within a relatively recent or soon amount of time, based on data. Okay. Not really a long way to go about it. Good question. Yes.
So I was checking the sixth grade science, and in the past, I used to teach 4th grade science, and we had all the resources, and then we had the formative assessment as well. So I can't see him for 6th grade. I went to 4th grade, and because of the unit now, so do we have, I see that at the end, you guys have the lessons, to evaluate it, formative, but I don't see
For science, we have those unit plans now. There is talk from our curriculum department of doing a formative for science with those standards being so new. And I don't know yet which direction they're gonna go, if it's gonna be kind of a written or more performance-based. Those things are still kind of in process for science.
Okay,
It
so.
was the plan last year, but last
I
year.
wanted to make sure that I
Yeah,
wasn't.
you're not missing it.
Okay.
But Lourdes, we could get together during planning, you, Donna, myself, Steve, and we could start creating those formatives together.
Okay.
That's something we could start working on.
And you'll find some the teachers have created and the teachers submit the resources, but it's not there formally.
And I see, there's a part that, the lesson 6 from the unit, the last one, I guess.
We'll have that.
It's the evaluative formative monitoring.
Exactly, so that's kind of the stopgap.
Okay. Yeah, you got it. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, you're not
I wasn't
missing,
missing.
you're not missing a thing. You got it. I'd like to get you on the website. So here's what I'm going to do. You have some pages in front of you. I'll ask that you follow along on my screen first. not gonna go out there and shove your computer lids down and stop you, but I will tell you this, if you're trying to click along with me while I'm clicking up here, you might get lost. But if you follow along in your packet with me and up here, and then I promise I'll stop talking and I'll give you time to type it, all right? So I'm gonna go through these particular things, and you have a whole bunch of packets, or pages in your packet. I'm gonna come over here after I get the packet. And I'm gonna start with logging in and general navigation. So what that means, I'm gonna show you how to log in, and then I'm gonna show you the general navigation pieces that are on, oh my goodness, page 15. So if you would turn to pages 14 and 15, again, just a reminder, I do have a demo login. When I'm done showing you these things, I will put the demo login up in case anybody needs it. But if you use the demo, please let Deanna know so we can get you your own login over the next day or two, all right? So I am going to beyondtextbooks.org. I'm on our public facing page right now, which means I have not logged in yet. And one thing I just want to point out is that on the public facing page with no login, there is a parent portal. So if you have parents who are active and involved and want to know what standards you're teaching or want some information, this is a great place to give them some support so that they can support their kiddos at home. So I'll encourage you at some point to jump in and see what's there. But no login is needed, so you don't need to share your information with them or do anything along those lines, all right? I'm going to log in under the demo as well so that I'm showing you exactly what you're going to see. So I click on that login button, and then the demo, which I will put back up, is this email. Your own username, by the way, will always be your entire email address. And then I've got my password. And I will put these pieces back up, I promise. Your password will be whatever you want. Hopefully this password works. All right, well, I'll have one of you guys check that in a little bit, and I can always give you a different one. Nope, but I need a different demo now. Sorry. I swear I just swallowed wrong. Thank you. By the way, I promise I just swallowed wrong. Clarify these days, don't we? All right, so I'm now on Beyond Textbooks. And for whatever reason, that demo wasn't working for me, even though I had tried it earlier, so we'll see. If it doesn't work for you, I can give you something. I'm going to go through the things on page 15. Page 15. Feel free to take notes on page 15, and then again, I'll give you some time before I overlay some new information as well. Top left, search function. This is just a reminder that there is a search bar here on the top right. Ironically, I feel like the search bar kind of gets lost sometimes. So top right, there's a search bar. It searches within BT, and you can filter it down. So if you know your like a keyword of your standard, or the name of a teacher who shares things that you really like, our special education teachers love that search bar because they can say, okay, I know what my different students that I'm supporting are learning in their general education classrooms, but I'm going to search by a keyword and find things at different grade levels. So that search bar is there if you want it. Top left, that BT logo will always take you back to the home page. So just know that as you click through and you're clicking around and you're maybe exploring, you get a little bit lost in BT, logo takes you back to the home page. I'm going to skip breadcrumbs, but I'll come back to breadcrumbs. I'm going to show you these things on the left, which are not in the calendar. So the calendar piece I'll show you next, but it takes you for 1 week at a time. What am I teaching next week? What am I teaching the week after that? These things on the left-hand side of page 15 are good for your whole course. For all of, say, 4th grade math, or all of, 6th grade writing. So I want to show you where you find your summary pages, because these sometimes get a little bit lost as well, or we forget about them during our week-to-week lesson planning. To get to your summary page, instead of going into calendar, you're going to go into the grade level band, either pre-K through 5th 6 through 8. Specialist teachers who are in the room, there's a section of specialists area. You can find some resources there as well. I'm going to go in here. Once you get to your grade level band, it has each grade level and then the 5 core subject areas indicated. So to find summaries of standards and standards for posting, you're going to go to any grade level, any subject area, math, reading, writing, science, or social studies. I'll go into social studies for fun in whatever grade I just went into. I'm now at the summary page for all of 2nd grade social studies. Any grade level, math, reading, writing, science, and social studies, these first 2 links on the left are going to be the same. It's a summary of standards. So if you want to know what your essential standards are for the year in order, you just want that big like overview of all of the standards, you have it here. And you can download a PDF if you want it. It's there for you. Sometimes we want that global look, right? And don't try to click through on the calendar from month to month. It just gets kind of messy. This is a cleaner way to find them. The other thing that you'll have, second one down, are standards for posting. Many of you nodded your heads that you post your standards in your classroom. If you don't care about fancy fonts or pretty borders and you just want to hit print and have them ready to post, they're there for you. We have every essential standard with the essential questions for the year in one PDF. So again, you don't have to use this, but it was one of those things that many teachers were kind of all creating the same wheel, so we posted them for you. So that's going to be the same: math, reading, writing, science, social studies. As I scroll down, as I slide down my finger here, the next box I want to show you are daily math and daily grammar reviews. Does anybody use daily math reviews or daily grammar reviews?
We used to.
Used to? All right, I see some heads nodding. I'm going to go back to the home page. We have Bellwork created for math and Bellwork created for ELA, specifically writing. To find those, go to your grade level band, pick any grade level, go into either math or writing. Okay, and on the right-hand side, first of all, remember how I promised you summary standards and standards for posting were going to be there? Right-hand side, you're going to see daily math reviews, if it's math, or daily grammar review if it's grammar. What these are for both of them, math and grammar, you download. They're broken down by quarter, so you can get a PDF or a PowerPoint if you want to edit it. Download it one time for the quarter, put it on your desktop or whatever. It's 5 questions per day for every day of the school year of a spiraled review. So it's not directly connected to the calendared standard. It's something students should have already learned that we want to make sure that they're not going to forget, we want to make sure that they are retaining. So 5 questions a day and an answer key. 5 questions a day and an answer key. So again, any grade level math page or the writing page, you're going to see that. Any grade level for reading, and by the way, I'm going to use the breadcrumbs to go back just a little bit. I promised you I'd show you those pieces too. I don't want to go all the way back to the home page. I'm just going to go back to 6th grade for this. And this time I'll go into reading. Any grade level for reading, we have readworks.org resources attached as well. It's a different website, it's a different program, it's not us, but we think that they're phenomenal. If you've never used readworks.org, it's reading passages, there's vocabulary assignments, sometimes there's lesson plans, sometimes the passages are leveled, and it's totally free. You do need to create a login for readworks.org, but it's totally free. I wouldn't tell you to do anything if you had to pay for it. And we've outlined which of their reading standard, or which of their pages go along best with our pages, both on the standard page and on, both on the summary page and on individual standard page. So ReadWorks, if you see that, highly encourage you to utilize it. A lot of good cross-curricular connections there too for like science and social studies. Finally, profile and favorites. I'm going to go to a particular, and this looks brand new this year. I'm on a particular standard. Here's all my teacher submitted resources. Maybe I'm looking at this particular lesson plan. This is something shared by an individual teacher. And I think to myself, yes, I might want to use this, but I'm still gathering my resources right now. I'm seeing what I have in a textbook, and I'm seeing what's available on BT, but I don't want to lose this resource, right? Rather than having to remember what the title is, or save the entire link in a separate document, excuse me, you can favorite this and flag it so you can find it again. And that's what we mean by profile and favorite. To flag it or to favorite it, top right, you see this heart? You're gonna click on that. You create your own categories. That's why everybody needs to have their own login after today, because you're gonna create your own categories. These are all categories I've already created on this account. If there's not one, I can recreate a new one here. It can be specific to a standard. It can be as general as stuff I might use next week. You create your own category. So I'll call this reading resources, add it to my reading resources category, and I save it. At any time, if I want to see my list of things I have favorited, you're going to go to your name in the top right. My name today is Beyond Textbooks because I'm on a demo account. When it's your own login, that'll say your name, it's a little person. The first drop down is your favorites. And then you have a list of everything you favorited. So you can put them in, or you can drag and drop them in order Monday through Friday. You can delete them from here. Nope, never mind, I found something better, I'm gonna get rid of it. Organize this page however you want. It's your page to organize. All right? All right, that was fast, but as promised, I'm now going to stop talking and give you about 5 minutes to make sure that you can get logged in. I'll put the demo up in case you can't. If that demo doesn't work for you, let me know. What happens? And then find your grade level summary pages and explore these things on page 15. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then I'm going to pull you back and show you some additional things. So on each page, I'll just make like the same summary pages as a reading page. So connected resources and actions.org. That's a separate website. They have these passages that are really good that connect to our standards. There's a separate website. We have a lot of their links to the website. You'll see them. I love Prime. The only caveat is that you'll need a password, username, and password for rewards. It's totally free. So if you want to, if you never use it before, you want to sign up, you don't get a credit card or anything. I use my same username and password as I do for BGE and use them kind of interchangeably. Yeah. But if we have like some kind of strategy page, so you don't have to search for political constraints. Sounds good. Thank Yeah, I know. It's a work in progress. I know it's not like a priority. I know, but it's good. We're gonna have I love it. Yeah, keep checking. I'm not sure what the time frame is. I think last year everything got kind of changed. The priorities changed. Oh yeah. So we're just now starting to that will change. But I'm sure she'd send it to you. I'm just doing a lot of unless she added the new separately. I'm really happy that apologize for that. So for today only, I'm actually gonna give you a different demo that I used 2 days ago that worked, I promise. The only difference with this one is actually for a different organization. So the calendar might be off just a tiny bit, but you're only gonna use this demo for a couple of days until we get you on your own. So, if you want, you can take a snapshot of this or write it down and then move along from this screen in just a moment. Again, this is only for those folks who don't have your own username and password yet. And you are also gonna make sure you let Deanna know. But for today, use hider@beyondtextbooks.org as your username and password hider21, all right? And I apologize for that, I don't know why it's not working. So what I want to show you now, since I have your attention, I'm going to show you from the calendar point of view, kind of that normal flow for weekly lesson planning. So everything that I just showed you there on page 15, those are kind of those quarter long or whole course long pages. Don't forget about the summary page for your grade level and your subject area, because there's a lot of great resources there. By the way, there's some that I haven't even shown you. So as you go to your grade level pages that are outside of the calendar, but you go to your grade level and you pick one of your subject areas. I only talked about a few of them. There's a lot of resources here I encourage you to check out, okay? But what I want to show you now is the calendar piece and kind of, hey, I'm lesson planning for a specific standard. I'm going to teach you next week. What do I do? So for that, you will start in your calendar. I'm going to share with you some calendar navigation tips. When you click into your calendar, nothing will populate here until you go over to the left and use this separate scroll area and choose your grade level and a subject area. Once you do that, it's going to default to the current week of the school year. And yours might look different than mine because we're on different demo accounts, okay? I want to share this though. If you teach more than one subject, which many of you do, you can pull in multiple subject areas and look at multiple calendars at once. You can pull in multiple grade levels. Special education teachers, for example, love that, saying, hey, I support kids in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. What are they all doing in math? I'm going to look at my 3rd grade math, my 4th grade math, and my 5th grade math calendar at once, for example. You could look at every calendar K-12 if you wanted to. Don't do that though. It would be incredibly overwhelming. But you can choose over here on the left by pinning check marks next to the standards that you want to see. And again, I'm just going to really encourage you to have your attention up here at the screen for about 4 more minutes, and then you'll get back on your own computer. I also want to share with you this. This calendar, you can click all the way through to the end of the school year, all the way back to the beginning of the school year. It just defaults to the current week. Oftentimes, you're going to have to move it a week forward because if we're on Wednesday, you're probably lesson planning for next week, right? So you could say, hey, I know that today is the 11th, but I want to click forward and look at the week of the 16th. You can look at a week at a time, or a month at a time, or a year at a time. Again, though, don't go to a year at a time because you want to see that list of all of your standards. That's where you want to use that summary of standards that I shared with you, because it's just a cleaner way to look at it. You can look at different formats. You can pop these calendars over to your iCal or your Outlook or your Google Calendar. You have a lot of navigation pieces or a lot of choices here. Once you decide, okay, I'm looking at this 4th grade math standard. I know it's an essential standard because it says, has my standard coding, it says my highly proficient student can piece. I do want to point out this, though, this is an example of every now and then there's those additional standard links. So for additional standards, it's just going to say, hey, don't forget about these. And this is when we suggest you maybe introduce them. 1st month or any month, 7th month, but when you introduce those is totally up to you. When you get to the essential standards, look at your approximate days, click on that BT link. This is now that page I showed you in screenshots, right? Curriculum documents, start there. You have unwrapped documents, those formative assessments, and a variety of other things that change from grade level to grade level and subject to subject. Use those. And take some time sometimes to explore what's there. Then as you scroll down, teacher submitted resources. One thing to mention, anytime at the end of a list you see those 3 little dots, there's actually more there. Open it up. A lot of resources there. And then if you're interested, hey, what are these 6 worksheets that Jessica shared from Bullhead City? You can click into that. And again, you have them in a variety of formats. These are the same 6, but in PC, in Mac, in PDF, or in Google. I always open the PDFs first so I can see what they look like, but then if I was going to use it, maybe that editable version, so I can modify it a little bit if I choose to. And then as a reminder, if this is something I'm considering, you can always add it to your favorites here. Questions about that? Running a little low on time. Take about 4 more minutes and explore your calendar. If you're in grade level in second grade that has a calendar, otherwise stick with where you were. 4 more minutes for exploration. I'm going to layer on a few more pieces for you. You may get at it. Yeah, however you want to do whatever. agenda being about 3.5 hours. So I know I'm just giving you little snippets and not maybe as much time for you to dive in, but hopefully by having the handouts and you're taking notes, you'll know where to go and you can explore a little bit later. What I'd like to do is now point you to page 21 in your handout packet. These are some additional resources that are there for a variety of grade levels and subject areas. I'm going to go big picture and show you what's here. I encourage you to jot these things down so that you'll know which ones you really want to explore maybe a little bit later, which ones might work best for you. I'm on the home page, so I'm going to use the BT logo and go back to the beginning. Everything on the left-hand side of this page is actually in the bucket or the button that's called additional resources. So, and I would definitely encourage you to maybe indicate that. The left-hand side is all going to be in additional resources. Let me explain what these are. Multiple objective projects. You choose your grade level, and you'll come to teacher-submitted resources that are things that teachers did to teach that aren't congruent to just one standard, but to multiple objectives over the course of, say, a quarter. Right? So you get towards the end of the quarter and you're doing a review and you want to, bring a couple of different standards together. Those resources will be there under multiple objective projects. And again, there's these 3 dots so you can choose your grade level. Encourage you to check that out. On the right-hand side here, next one down is professional practices. These are things, if you interact with students at all during the day, in any context, there are going to be some professional practices that will help you out. So these are grouped into grade level bands because they're not academic in nature. From there, there's resources for the beginning of the year. And it's not too late to do some fun like get to know you, some continued relationship builders. There's classroom management resources. There's communication, things for holidays and special occasions, and then Lit Circle resources. And those are grade level bands, all right? So that's professional practices. Data collection sheets. If you give the formative assessment, if you teach math or reading, then you'll want to go into data collection sheets. And you can download for your grade level an Excel spreadsheet that makes it really easy to keep track of your formative. So that whole scoreboard on throughout the game piece, you'll know exactly, it'll really help you pinpoint exactly which students need what in terms of support, reteach or enrich for each academic standard. Yes, question?
Sorry, after that, where did you get that?
Yeah, I'm also looking where do you find it on the thing?
All right, let me show you again, but again, if we could look up here instead of at your computers, I would really appreciate that. So all of these 5 things that are on the left-hand side of your page, these are all under, from the home page, the button that says additional resources. So from the home page, the button that says additional resources.
Okay.
So on the left, again, it's just the left, and then I'll show you the things on the right. But on the left, the top one is multiple objective projects. That's going to be the first one. Second one is professional practices. So that's going to be here. Data collection sheets are down just a little bit further.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And those are going to be right there. You're very welcome. And so then you click into that and it'll ask you, and you'll download the version for your grade level. Behavior standards also are here. Behavior standards are also here. And these are great for supporting student behaviors, right? So these are not academics, they're not even based by grade level. But we've got professional resources, classroom skills, maybe you have a student or a group of students who have a hard time getting along with others. Or working their problems out calmly, right? Any behavior you want to support, come here, dig in, and you'll find teacher-submitted resources to support that behavior. We're going to go back to additional resources. So those are behavior standards. Finally, social emotional learning. I highly encourage you to check that piece out again for any student. If you interact with a student during the day for any reason, some great social emotional learning pieces. And then there's some mindful minute resources as well. That's essentially everything that's in this additional resources bucket from the homepage are those things over there. I encourage you to check those out. On the left-hand side, I already actually showed you these bottom two, the standards for posting and the parent portal. There are some project-based learning tasks that you can find on your summary pages and some benchmark reviews that you can find on your summary pages for certain grade levels and for certain subject areas. So again, I'll go into a grade level. Math is where you're going to find project-based learning. It's right underneath those daily math reviews. Project-based learning takes multiple standards from multiple content areas into a project. And there's at least 2 created for each grade level, one for semester 1 standards, one for semester 2 standards. That's where you're going to find those. And then benchmark reviews are more quarterly reviews for a benchmark, whether that's an assessment or just over the benchmark time frame that you want to do review, multiple standards, you're going to find those there as well. And then finally, if you teach science, science standards are relatively new, as you know, but if you go into individual standards, while we don't have formative assessments for science, there are unit plans that are super helpful and pretty complete, big hefty pieces, right?
Yeah.
So this is going to be on an individual science standard, unwrapped document. Check out those unit plans if you teach science. I want to show you, that's not what I want. Just a couple more things while I'm here, because I know we're getting really close to our time, to our end time. But from page 21, are there any other questions that I can clarify for you of what's there? Before I continue on, I want to share with you one other thing. Should you choose to share your own resources on Beyond Textbooks, page 22 has a one-pager that'll show you kind of how to do it step by step. But then what I'd like to do is actually point you to page 23. This is how to get help with Beyond Textbooks. And we're coming pretty close to our shot clock here. But I want to make sure that, I've shared with you a lot, and my hope is that after today, you kind of dive back in, you use these pieces, you took some great notes, use them. Oh yeah, I wanted to go check out those behavior standards, or I didn't get a chance to look at the, benchmark reviews, whatever the case may be. And maybe you have a question, right? Because I'm talking really fast, I'm throwing a lot at you today. And you have a question, it's tomorrow, it's next week, it's next month. What do you do? This on page 23. First thing is BT staff and your own colleagues, right? Because again, I'm throwing a lot at you. You might have heard something that the person next to you missed, and vice versa. Ask around. There's a bunch of different levels in terms of how much you use Beyond Textbooks in this room as well. Ask the folks around you, but also feel free to reach out and ask us. I shared with you my direct email is here on your agenda. There's a contact button on the website as well that you can find. So feel free to ask. I'm also going to show you our FAQ section for frequently asked questions and the help desk as well. I'm not going to worry too much about those changes and updates. But let me show you these 2 pieces. Again, I'm back on the home page. I'm just going to go back all the way to the front. I'll actually start here first. If you'll notice, bottom right-hand side, bottom right-hand corner of every page, even as the page scrolls, there's a help button. I promise you this help button is essentially the same as using our emails. It comes straight to us. So if you click on that help button, it's going to ask you for your name, your email address, and how we can help you. And what's really cool is we know exactly what page you were on when you asked that question. So if you had a question about a specific, standard page that you were on, and you click help from there, we know right where you were, and it comes straight into our emails. So, and we work to get back to people within the same day, 24 hours typically at the most if you use that help button. Same thing with email though, we can get back to people right away. So that's that help button. I also want to share with you where you find some frequently asked questions and their answers, of course. If you scroll down, we just spent some time in that additional resources bucket, but the next one says helpful links. So you might want to write that next to FAQ on your page, helpful links. And if you click into helpful links, the first option is frequently asked questions. From here, if you have somebody new start here in Continental halfway through the year and you want to give them a quick overview of the 7 starting points, there's really short little videos here on each of the 7. There's also website navigation. Basic website navigation, short video. Maybe you get pretty comfortable and we have a couple of weeks under our belt of school and you want to do some advanced website navigation. You can say, I know there's stuff out there that I don't know is there yet. Watch that. Planning tools, navigating calendars, etc. And then there's some how-to videos as well. This is the other piece. If you want to add your own resource to Beyond Textbooks and the page 22 isn't quite enough for you, watch a short video on how to do that. Or how to use the Google Formatives on BT. We were talking about that a minute ago. How to navigate the EL section, how to use those data collection sheets that I mentioned. There's some great things here as well. And again, if you still have a question, use that help desk because we're here to support. All right. So that's it for page 23. Any questions about that? Again, I'm throwing a whole lot at you today. My hope from here is that you will, get this guy started again. My hope is that you will take some time after today, take these notes and dive into the pieces that we didn't have time for you to dive into that I showed you, and ask questions as they come up with the folks around you, of myself, of the help desk, etc. All right, well, with our last 4 minutes together, as any good teacher does, we're going to do some closing. We can't end without closing. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to kind of modify this a little bit. Look back through your notes or think back through the things we talked about. We identified the 7 starting points. We talked specifically about each of the 7, briefly, but specifically, and then we did a lot of website work, right? Identify one thing you already knew, maybe a new learning. Put those things together and come up with your one takeaway for the afternoon. Something new that maybe you didn't know was on BT or that you had forgotten about, or you learned how to do something. Your takeaway for the afternoon. Just on your own. All right. And we're going to do a stand and share. So what that means is, let me have you back real quick. When I say go, I'm going to ask everybody to stand up. Just stay right at your chair. So go ahead and stand up. Somebody will share out their takeaway. When you share out your takeaway, you get to sit down. If somebody else shared the takeaway that you were thinking, you also get to sit down when they say it. Sit down. But you don't all have the same takeaway. As the first person, I promise you don't. Go ahead and everybody stand up if you would. Okay. 4 or 5 share outs, and then we'll wrap up for the afternoon. Wait, what? Oh, hold on. We're not right yet. We're not all standing yet. Slow down. All right.
You can click on multiple subjects. I like to do reading and writing with social studies. I can click on all 3 of them and get those down.
All right, thank you. So if that is yours, then on the calendar, you could look at multiple content or multiple calendars together. You can sit down. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
I like that there's a life skills section and a support section.
Life skills section and a support section. I love that. And I didn't show you that. So make sure that as you're finding cool things that you know other people would appreciate, share them if you would. I appreciate that. Sir, in the back.
There's a music lesson plan.
There are music lesson plans. Yes. Thank you very much. Right here.
The summary of standards.
Summary of standards. That list. That's super helpful. Over here, you're next.
The daily review for different subjects like grammar and reading or math. And
yes,
the
daily math review, daily grammar review. Your bell work is done if you want it to be. You can modify it, but it's done if you want it to be. Thank you very much. Sure.
Also, there are standards for Spanish. Anyone else to be?
World languages, yes, there are standards for those, for Spanish, for French, for German.
Oui, oui.
Am I seeing? Who else? Those of you still standing, what will you share? I like the science. That's what it is. Oh, science. You know, like those science unit plans. Thank you, I appreciate that.
The formatives will be on Google Classroom, so I'm gonna try to get that a little bit.
The formatives on Google, if your kids have a device, why not practice using it? Save some paper, they probably are gonna like it better, et cetera, et cetera.
I like that you could favorite it and it like goes and you can create your own favorite.
Yes, those favorites and your profile page. Add the things to your favorites. I used to look at resources all the time. It's easy, but I couldn't remember what they were called. Anybody else was standing?
I like the additional resources, so you don't have to spend your own money on Teachers Pay Teachers.
Right, additional resources, right? There's some really good stuff in there. All right. Think we're having a conversation, I'm sure we're still standing for the. Are you still standing?
Are you still standing, Claudia? No, you're gonna
We love having science and social studies. They have the standards on one page, and it's easy to read and they have resources. So we're excited.
Science and social studies matter, right? They're big deals. So those are there. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's 3 o'clock on the dot. I thank you for your time and your attention, and I hope you get to have your kiddos back tomorrow. And if you don't, make the most of another. So let me know how I can move forward. Thanks, Brian.
I know where you're going.
Oh, wait, one moment. Thank you so much, Chelsea. We appreciate you. We're super excited to have an in-person presentation. I want to thank you all for your cooperation today. I sent you all an updated email about, I think it was lightning that struck. They're still working on stuff, but we did send an e-note, and it's going to be posted on social media for our parents to know that school will resume tomorrow. And we'll keep you posted and updated on if anything happens. But the weekly news that I send out, Carrie, Erin, and Ariana were the first 3. Next week, please really read through that weekly. It's important that you read through it so we're all on the same page. It takes you like 5 minutes if you could just read through it, okay? And thank you. Oh wait, one more thing. Dress code, handbooks. We're going to be posting next week. We have our middle school open house. We're going to be posting the handbooks live, talking to the middle school parents there, letting them know that they're going to be able to verify that they've gone through it with their students. So we'll be sending those emails out to all the schools starting next week. But there's going to be some corrections. If you ran through anything, one of the things was with the dress code, with the jeans. I know it's big with middle schoolers. They're asking. If they have holes, I had sent an email out at the start of the year, but I'm going to re-edit it and I'll send a update to parents. If it's holes above the knee, that's when they have to have the